In the late 1960s and through the 1970s and on up until now, because my family and I were trying to stay alive. We were used as a CIA test area for Agent Orange so that they could monitor what was happening at home without being shot at, where they apply it in Vietnam. And of course we didn't know what they were doing to us then, and it was under the guise of an agricultural program, but 18 of my immediate neighbors died, and we had heavy losses in our livestock, and we almost died. And so I've lost, my sister has lost 2 of her children, and her husband at the present time has very serious cancer. So we're well aware of some of the problems, and when we go to the doctors, why, they're licensed to practice. Secondly, they were intimidated by the government and told that this was only an agricultural program and that these things were well tested and don't pay any attention to the paranoia of the public and so forth. And so, and then the doctors were ignorant of the problems because they aren't familiar with pesticides and this type of thing. So when we go to the doctors, they would give us something for the pain. But that was expensive, and it was also drug treatments, which I'm not totally opposed to, but which have all kinds of side effects. And so we started experimenting with ways to stay alive. And we've applied some of these things, and they're very, very effective. In the previous talk, some of you were probably just here when Michael was talking. He was talking about environmental radiations from electronic things, and we've also been working with things like that because they're a problem. But this railing is a railing, it doesn't look particularly spectacular. On the left, I have a pond here as you come into our place, and the railing comes in from the highway. And one of the things that I did also, I live out in the country, and while our business, most of what we make, which is handmade tiles of southwestern birds and so forth, we've done this for 41 years. Most of what we make is shipped out of state. Our business is mail order, but it's very profitable to have people come to where we are, but we're not in the best of all locations, except it's a lovely place to live. So one of the things that we did was we found that if we could get people to come into our yard, that the average person who would visit our studio spends about $100. And we're not money conscious, but it's very handy when you're trying to pay your electric bill and buy food and things like that. So we certainly don't turn it away. And I built a railing, and some of you have seen this before, which was of railroad ties that leads in from out by the road. And I've done other things to landscape our yard, which make it very, very attractive. It's pleasing to us to live there, and it's also great for people coming in. All right, it's nostalgic. So one of the things that I found in dowsing was that this would be like Stonehenge. When you look at these uprights, if you douse these uprights, and those are brick pillars, then if you douse them, you'll find that they're of a negative polarity. Anything coming up from the ground is negative polarity, and with a pendulum it would rotate to the left. And anything that runs along horizontally is of a positive polarity. And when you put polarities together, Michael Joffrey over there put me about 5 years ago onto polarity. And until that time I wasn't really conscious of it. But when you put opposing polarities together, you create life energy. And our railing is designed so that it comes in a curve and leads you around into our yard and to our studio. And people who come up there and wonder, should we stop or should we come in, just feel drawn in. And we found that as soon as we installed that our business about doubled. And that helps, because when I want to take off for a week and go to a conference or something, I can do it. So I'm going to move on, but that's one use of life energy. This is something that, let me see if I can get the focus it a little better. Whoop, that's not better. What happens when you get it the other way? Okay, go back the other way. That's not bad, is it? That's good. Okay, we found, one of the things that I found quite by accident was that trees are very aware of life energy. Now for people who are water dowsing, trees tell you where water is. And I didn't know that. I've never heard anybody say anything about that, except they say there are certain types of trees that like to grow over water, like a cottonwood, or mesquite does. But I also found that the Did I do that?
No, it drifted. Drifted. There you go.
All right. I also found that the limbs on trees point to water, and I found this by accident. In the years that I've been talking about dowsing to people who come and visit, I've told them how to find water, and I've dowsed across our yard and let them find water veins that I knew were already there, but I had never dug. And a few years ago, I decided to dig a 9-foot deep trench across our yard above our house to carry any surface water away in a tile drain during the winter times when we have considerable groundwater. And when I dug this, it dug across some of these places we had dowsed, and we instantly hit water. And I found that anywhere you had a tree, this is a hackberry tree, anytime you have a tree with suckers or branches hanging down like fingers, that where you have one arm reach way out and point down, that the distance from here to the ground on a level with the base of the tree is the same distance it is below, directly below to water. As above, so below. And everywhere we dug a trench, and there were about 7 places we crossed streams of water that I had dowsed in the past, while we had water coming in at those exact spots. This is another example of a limb that's reaching. The tree is out here, and the limb is reaching over here and comes down here. And the distance from the base of the tree across, if I came across from the base on a level and then went down that same distance below ground, there is a stream of water there. I had already dug it in our yard. All right, here's another example of limbs. This tree, it's a little hard to see. When I photograph things, they don't show up in the photograph like they did when I looked at them. But here are suckers or little limbs hanging down on this tree, and also here. And there is a stream of water that runs right across this way and under this limb. Notice this feature on this limb, how it's coming out and down. It's like an arm going like that. For those of you that are interested particularly in finding water, just look at trees. If they have an arm that reaches way out, it'll tell you. This is where you can see the water. The base of the tree is about here. All right, and this is an upper pond in our yard, and notice how these limbs have come out and hung down. What's happening is the roots are growing out into the water, and they're the same distance below the ground that the limbs are above. And so you have the tree coming out this way, the roots coming from the bottom, and you have the limb coming out this way. But you can see the water there. All right, here's another example. I'm going to go quickly through these. Here's another example of a limb reaching. This is over the dry creek bed. This is a fig tree in our yard, and the limbs are reaching over here on this side, particularly. They're reaching over towards a stream of water that I know that's in the ground there. In other words, it's one I've dug and hit. This is a sycamore with a limb coming out. Notice how close this is to the ground. It's only about 3 feet down. Directly over here, just over this bank, is a dry creek bed, and the water level is exactly that depth. It's about 3 feet below ground level. I also, on the other side of the tree, have a limb up here that's reaching out for about 30 feet, and it comes down to where it's 1.5 feet above the ground. And you'd say, where would there be any water within 1.5 feet? It happens our septic tank leach line comes under there, and the tree has grown a limb that goes out, and it has grown roots that go out. So this is something that we are talking life energy, but it's something as dowsers I want you to be aware of. All right, now, noxious energies. We've heard people talking about noxious zones running in the ground caused by water or faults or things like this. This is a result of a hackberry tree growing directly over a noxious zone, which happens to be a water vein. And the tree, instead of having one stalk, has put up multiple stems. And we find this with a number of varieties of trees, pine trees and things like that. They will put up multiple stems. Here is another example of another grouping here. There's a zone that I've dowsed that comes right through there, and a water zone, and it's a noxious zone. If you go along it, you also find ant hills on top of it. Ants like to build their nests over noxious zones, water veins, and wasps like to build their nests and things like that. So it's one of the things you can spot easily. Anytime you see multiple stems on a tree, then you might consider it's worth checking to see if there's a noxious zone and a water vein that goes through there. This is coming, on the other side of this is our pond, and there's a stream that runs right across between these two and goes on. And you'll notice that on both sides the trees have multiple stems. Other places in our yard that are not over noxious zones, the trees have, the hackberries all have a single stem. Okay, this is a Aleppo pine, I believe. And the base of it is down here, and it is leaning way away from a noxious zone. It's just pulled way back. It's my daughter's yard. It's quite unhappy with it. That's right. Michael, in the previous session, was talking about using fiberglass cloth and quartz rope, quartz silice, as something to neutralize these zones, and also on telephones and computers and fluorescent lights and things like that. This tree, I spotted this tree from the highway, and so I went and dowsed to see what kind of an energy there was, because it's split, this pine. And that's up near Flagstaff, and it is growing on a noxious zone. Often lightning strikes trees. This is one here that has had that problem. Often they grow twisted.
Isn't there water on that tree?
Yes, it's a noxious zone and it's a water zone. And this tree is one that's split, and also, let's see if I can focus a little better here. There, whoop, too much. Somewhere. That's not bad. All right, you'll notice the twist in this particular tree. Quite often you'll see trees that are spiraled, and they will spiral over a noxious water zone like that. You'll see it quite often twisted. And then this is another one here that is twisted. Of course, the tree lived there for quite a while, but many of these trees, like the one over here, let me see if that'll focus any better. No. There we go. This one over here is a lightning strike. And this zone ran right through underneath them. And that has been hit by lightning. I think that was too, if I remember, but it's above the picture. This is just another picture of the energy railing. You're looking in as you come into my yard, and this curves around and goes over there and then curves toward our studio. But going to move on. This is an example again of a limb reaching. You can see it, and here you can see the water. If we came out on a level from the base of the tree, the distance on a level from the base of the tree up to the limb, the base of the limb there, is the same distance it is down to the water, and you can see the water there. The only thing is that oftentimes, reaching out over a road or something, you'll see a long limb from a tree that reaches clear out to the center of the road and comes down over the center of the highway. And at the same depth below ground as that is above, you'll find water. This is just another generation of dowsers coming along. My son-in-law and two of my grandchildren. I have 6 of them. But they're making use of the water that we find through dowsing. And then there are other kids that belong to the family. I have baby goats sometimes that they see the boat sitting there and they run and jump in and out of it. The boat pushes away from shore. They find themselves out in the middle and are blatting for mama usually. But we'll move on. This is a French coil, and talking about energy batteries, I'll hold this up in a little while and maybe you can all see it, but, well, here it is. I don't have to hold it. But this is a wire coil, and it comes down to a piece of iron reinforcing steel, or rebar as we call it, and it's just fastened to it. And this particular tree needed something. It had quite a few insects, and it's a dwarf nectarine tree. and I wanted to know what to do to make it better. So first I went out with a pendulum and I swung the pendulum and said, "May I talk to you?" And some of you are familiar with that approach and some are not, but it said yes. The pendulum swung yes. And so then I said, "Do you need anything?" And it said yes. And so I asked, can I make it, would you like a French coil? And it said yes. So I said, all right, which way do you want it to rotate? Do you want it to rotate to the right, or do you want the spirals to rotate to the left? And it indicated what it wanted. And then I said, how many turns do you want? And then since there are 3 limbs on this, there is a noxious zone through here. So since there are 3 main limbs here, and it's somewhat split and was having a problem with it, I said, do you want it on this one? No. Do you want it on this one? Yes. Do you want it on that one? No. So we put the 1, 2, 3, 4. It wanted 5 turns. And we put that in, and the tree has, one, grown very well. Secondly, it has produced a tremendous amount of fruit, and it's happy. So, you know, and after we put something on, I ask, are you happy now? Is this all right? Will you be happy with it? And I do talk to trees, and I talk, strangely as it may seem, I talk to rocks and things too with a pendulum. But by the time you've been around a few of these sessions at the Dowsers, you'll find yourself talking to them and talking to yourself. One of my problems is sometimes I say, huh, when I'm talking to myself, and that gets you in trouble. But come on in, Dr. Payne.
What is the gauge of the wire?
The gauge of the wire is, I don't know, it's about a number 8, I think, or something like that. I'm not sure. Any wire that's big enough that it'll support its weight. If you don't have a heavy wire, then what you want to do is take some sticks and drive in the ground, and then take insulation tape and tape the coils against it. So you'd have a vertical stick coming down to the ground, and the coils taped to it to support it. And that's one way that some people do it. I like to keep anything from touching these coils. They shouldn't touch the tree, and I personally prefer not to have them touch anything else. So I use a heavier wire. Some people do it the other way.
So the other end, does it just go up?
The other end sticks straight up in the air, and it's also directly above this end. You don't want it back on the back side somewhere. I have a number of my trees. I have an almond tree there that wasn't producing any almonds. It was a few years old, and I put a French coil on it, and it produces about 2 5-gallon plastic buckets of almonds a year now for the last 2 years since I put one on. It's very happy. Yes?
What type of wire do you use?
Copper wire. Yes.
What gauge, Bob?
I don't know. 8, I think. Just a heavy wire. The wire you get from a telephone pole, ground wire or whatever.
How do you connect it to the rebar?
Sir?
Is that an accepted method, that it should not touch the tree?
That's an accepted method. If you want to, you know, this is a dowsing group, and anything I tell you may or may not be so. I'm expressing my opinions. I believe them to be so. They work for me. And I'd say any time it's a good idea to talk with a plant or whatever it is you're doing. And as I say, an easy way to talk with them is just use the pendulum and ask. If you're going to work with a plant, say, may I talk with you? It says yes. Say, do you need anything? Can I help you? Do you want more fertilizer? How much fertilizer do you want? Which kind of fertilizer? On a scale of 1 to 10, how good would it be? Will you be happy if I do this? And then after you do it, ask, are you happy now? And that may sound very crazy, but believe me, when you start to work with nature, you'll find that nature indeed has a consciousness and will work with you.
How'd you connect the copper to the rebar?
Just with a clamp.
Oh.
There's a clamp right here. Okay, I'm going to move on because I've got a lot of things. This is a picture of my fingertips on my right hand, and of course it's blown up, but it's a Kirlian photograph of my my fingertips on the film, and this was before I did anything. And then this is a catalyst bead which we make there, an energy, life energy emitter, and this is a picture taken a number of years ago when what we were making wasn't nearly as strong as what we have now. But I'd like you to notice 2 things. One, the aura is broken or jagged here there's pathology on the fingertips. And in the second picture, when I'm holding I put a bead against my left arm and moved my fingers down and took a second photograph. Notice that it pretty well repaired the aura, and it also increased the energy. Now I'm going to be talking about energy batteries you can make yourself. Nothing you have to buy from me or anybody. That just using things like leaves in your yard. And they will do the same thing. What I make, I think, is better and stronger, and that's one of the reasons I do it. But what you make yourself will work. And that's important. All right. These are some pictures that I took. Now, talking about leaf batteries, which I'll be talking about in a few minutes. This is globe mallow and horehound and goosefoot plant. And what I've done here, you'll notice there's north up there, that direction. What I've done here was simply stack these leaves one on top of another. When we're talking about leaf batteries, I select leaves from plants with a pendulum, and I ask, holding the pendulum, I had a pendulum a while ago and I can't figure out where it is in my pocket, but that's all right. Anyway, probably in my box there. Anyway, here's one. I simply ask, when I lay a leaf out, I hope everybody can see me here, I ask what direction is your energy rotation, and I want ones that rotate counterclockwise, and I want to find some leaves that rotate clockwise. So some of you want ones that rotate to the left, and you want ones that rotate to the right. And what you do is pick leaves from anything, but if you were trying to make a battery that had energy for a specific purpose, like suppose you were trying to correct a physical ailment you had, then you could take herb leaves that were known to be beneficial for that and select ones that had left rotation and right rotation and combine them. So that what I've done here is I stack we'll say this is a positive, a right rotational, and this is a negative, a left rotational, male, female. Stack them alternately in polarity, like the leaves in a or like the plates in a battery. All right, and here they are stacked, the three of them, and you'll notice the life energy in this photograph is going to show up as a little shadow. And I took a picture of a quartz crystal, and this is the energy that it's giving off here. And I took a picture of the leaves, and they do give off energy, but it isn't showing up very well in that photograph. And then I put the crystal behind the leaves. You're not seeing the crystal, but it's there. And I want you to notice when I combine the mineral with the organic, what a tremendous amount of energy there is there. Actually, that energy, if you were measuring it with an L rod, would you detect it about 12 feet away. Yes?
Using a particular kind of photography.
Well, it's energy photography. I could do it in color. That's in black and white. But Kirlian photography is generally done in color. My Kirlian camera won't take some of the pictures that I need for energy, so I'm using a black and white setup. But all right, and this is simply a close-up of the energy off of that. Now, I always point the stems the same way, and if you want the ultimate strength on a leaf battery or something like that, you could use pieces of cork, you could use all sorts of things. Just pick things that have opposing polarities. Get something that rotates to the left, to the right, to the left, and stack them that way. Right rotational, left rotational, right rotational, left rotational. And if you want to douse how many you should do for a specific purpose, ask how many layers do I need in this battery. All right, here is the close-up of that. You'll notice the amount of energy radiating off of it. It even darkens the photograph. Normally, when there's no energy being given, you have no darkness anywhere around it, but here it's also darkening the film. I'm going to move on. Okay, the leaves were put between two pieces of cardboard. I have here 2 pieces of corrugated cardboard. And I just stacked the leaves between them and folded the cardboard over it. And you see a little bit of energy off here. And then here is the same thing here. And here I have used a quartz crystal. And you don't see it, but it's on the other side here. And here I have used a crystal catalyst. catalyst bead against it, and the image of it shows clear through. It's showing through 5 leaves and 2 thicknesses of corrugated cardboard, and you still see the image of it. You can see what it has done. But the point is that if you use any time, if you combine something from the mineral kingdom, which we'll say a piece of quartz, a piece of granite, a gemstone, a quartz crystal, then you greatly enhance the energy being given off by something organic, like a leaf. Come on now. There it goes. All right. For many years I've been working with gemstones, and this is a necklace, a couple of necklaces that I made up for somebody else, and I'd like you to notice the energy being given off. These are not shadows. Those are actually energy radiating off from the gemstones. And what I have done here was select gemstones, and I would ask if I took an amethyst bead on a scale of 1 to 10, dowsing with a pendulum, how beneficial will this piece of amethyst or an amethyst bead be for this particular purpose, whatever you're trying to accomplish? And let's suppose a person had a respiratory problem, or let's suppose that they have an arthritic problem, or they have a erratic heart. Then you could ask, would amethyst be beneficial for this? And suppose I get yes. I'm deliberately moving the pendulum now. I get yes, all right, and then on a scale of 1 to 10, how beneficial would it be? Start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's starting to change at 7. So anything that runs, I'd say 7 or more, I like something as strong as 8. Anything that runs, say, 8 to 10 or in that range, I would select in the way of gemstones, going down the different stones that are available. And anything that is lower than that, I would push aside, not because it isn't good, but because there are things that are better. And then what I did was go along and alternate the polarities on the gemstones so that I used a left rotational, right rotational, left rotational, and I built a necklace. And I've done this. Some of you who've heard me before, I wear a necklace here, which I developed during the 1970s. And it's a similar necklace, and what it's for is that I was teaching out at the college nights, 2 nights a week, and the people that were coming were bringing a flu that was going around. And I had absolutely no immunity after the Agent Orange fiasco towards that flu, no immunity. And I had the flu something like a dozen times in 3 months. I mean, I just get over it, and I would be down with it again. One day I'd have a headache here, the next day here, the next day I'd feel totally rotten, and then I'd start getting over it, then I'd teach class again and have it again. And the people would get over it, but I wouldn't, and neither would Charmian. And so what happened was I sat down and dowsed out, can I combine gemstones and make a resonance which will keep me from getting the flu? It'll shatter this virus, but which would be beneficial to me. And I got a yes. So then I start selecting stones. How good on a scale of 1 to 10 would this particular stone be? How good would this one be? Putting them together, I have never had the flu since I put this on. And I just wear it. And it worked, and I wasn't getting it. Charmian still was. She was teaching nights too, and so she said, make me one. Well, everybody is different. When you douse, you'll find that no 2 people are alike. And so her contains slightly different gemstones than mine does because the resonance she needs is a little different. We'll move on. We also make pendants. I had a very erratic heart. My heart was going haywire. If you ever sprayed bugs with insecticide and watched them turn over and kick their legs, your heart starts to fibrillate, and one thing and another when you're exposed to pesticides. And I had a very erratic heart. There are 3 different times back some years ago when mine just stopped, and each time Charmian was by me and she got me going again, or I would not be here. She saw me go down and got me going, and I came out of it. I have a number of neighbors who their wife wasn't handy, and they're gone. I mean, like one friend felt bad. He went over to the hospital to be checked by the doctor. He got up and went into the restroom, and then he didn't come out, and he didn't come out, and he didn't come out. And so they went to see what had happened. He was in there dead. But if somebody had been there to give him CPR and get him going, he'd have probably been all right, because it's just a momentary spasming, and your heart just quits. Well, one of the things that I did was design a pendant we call a Breathe Easy for ourselves, and it was to straighten our heart out. Incidentally, Charmian stopped once, and I happened to be there. It was at night one night. She got up and went in the bathroom, and pretty soon I hear things sliding on the counter, and that didn't compute. I was half awake, but it didn't compute as to why is something sliding on the counter, falling over. So I called Charmian, no answer. Charmian, no answer. So I got up, I ran in the bathroom. She's sitting on the stool, her head back, her eyes totally dilated, no respiration. And I said, well, I won't repeat it, but I grabbed her and said, are you all right? And started to check her pulse again and her respiration and got her going, and she's here. And the goose kind of worked her over, but she's still here. It's a different problem. But anyway, what we did was we combined, for instance, for jasper is known to be good for circulation. Carnelian agate is known to be good for circulation. This is a catalyst bead, which is just simply to beef it up, the energy. And then I forget what we had here. I have a list that shows what they are, but I think we had tiger eye and lapis lazuli and carnelian, and those are all gemstones that improve circulation. We found they're really effective on people that have erratic hearts or have congestive heart problems where the left side of the heart isn't pumping the blood to the body like it ought to, or where they have emphysema and problems like that. So it helps respiratory. And it's just a little pendant that we make up. We also make up a number of other types. These are what we call a chakra balancer. And I'm going to move on.
Robert?
Yes?
What kind of photography technique are you using to
You wouldn't believe me. I have a Minolta EP310, I think, copier. And it loves to take energy photographs, and it's also exceedingly sensitive. For instance, I tried to take a picture of a Mexican pyramid with a flat top off the book cover, Ancient Astronomy, and it jammed the machine every time I tried to photograph it. And it absolutely couldn't. And after about 7 tries, I began to swear loudly, and Charmian said, oh, you never can run that machine. And she can. It speaks with her. And she came in. You know, copy machines know if you need something in a hurry and need it right. So they just know. And so they break down deliberately. It's the malevolence of inanimate objects. But anyway, so she started to work with it. She couldn't copy it. My daughter couldn't copy it. And so I didn't bring that with me, but I took a picture. I mean, I took a tab, but you could use a leaf battery the same way. I took one of our tabs that we call smog busters, because I thought the problem was that they sacrificed people when they built the pyramid. And I dowsed that out, and I found they had sacrificed something like 365,000. I have the count written down somewhere. And there's no way for me to prove it, but that's what I came up with, like, what, I don't know, 100 people for every day of the year or some such figure. It was a lot. And I thought there are all these entities that are locked into that, and the machine's sensitive to it. So I put a smog buster tab, and as I say, I could have used an energy battery made of leaves and put in there above that picture, right above the top of the pyramid, and then I ran it, and it copied fine. So I have a picture of the pyramid with a tab over the top of it. And it'll do that, but it won't copy it without it. Moving on, except this is just a catalyst bead, and I want you to see the energy around it, and also it's dark in the center. They have a hole, and it's showing it. And I want to show you something about, this is a quartz crystal again, and you can see the energy. This direction is north. The energy, life energy, always flows from the north to the south. And if you're trying to make something, well, a pyramid, you know that a pyramid should be oriented north-south. All right? If you orient a pyramid north-south, the energy in it is much, much stronger than it would be otherwise. Likewise, if you make a leaf battery, I said orient the stems of the leaves to the north. There are 2 reasons. One, the energy flows from north to south naturally, and if it's any other direction, it won't be as strong. The second thing is it flows from the lesser to the greater. Electrical energy flows from the greater to the lesser. If you stick a hairpin in the light socket, or the outlet, you get shocked. It's flowing from the greater to the lesser. But with life energy, it flows from the lesser to the greater. So if you had a serpent mound, it flows from the low end of the serpent mound up to the heap, up to the top. Likewise, if you're climbing a hill, you feel a lot better once you get up on top of it than you do down at the bottom. And in geomancy, where Feather Anderson and Nicholas Fink and so forth are working with these things, that's one of the things they're dealing with quite often. But here the energy is flowing from north to south. You see it stronger here, and it's flowing from the lesser, like a V. It's flowing from the lesser to the greater. And here I've taken a bead and put down here on the end, and we call them catalyst beads, and that's because they're a true catalyst. When you put it against quartz or gemstones, the energy just goes like gangbusters. It builds way up. We'll move on. I've also experimented with shapes. I showed you the original bead shape. Let's back up a second. All right, here's the original bead shape, and you can see the energy on it. It sticks out a little ways here. All right. If we move on, then I went to a V shape or a pyramid shape. Just a second. Here I've used a V shape, and this is showing the energy flowing from the lesser to the greater and north to south. I've turned them around and photographed them in different directions to see whether I was catching light reflection or something like that, and that's not the problem. It's going to flow regardless north to south. You'll always have the heavy shadow. And then here was the quartz crystal. Here was a piece of catalyst material which is in the shape of a pyramid or a V. And when I put the two together, you can see the energy. And not only that, there's a very heavy ray here. I was trying to find which shapes, the toroid or the pyramid or what else? I'll have to move on and find out. Or the spiral was the strongest. This is a close-up on the crystal and a piece of crystal catalyst that's pyramid shaped, and the energy. You can see this ray off here. All right. And then this is a spiral, and yeah, I've got a, what? You got the spiral?
Yeah.
You got my spiral? I got my spiral. I think, I don't know what I'm
We
doing.
don't have any users.
I'm lucky to even be here the way my brains work sometimes. Let me see. Okay, well, I can just tell you, Michael's got it. He can hold it up there once, or somebody can look at it. But this is a spiral. It spirals 3 times, and it spirals to the left. And when I say to the left, I mean starting at the little end, it spirals to the left 3 times. And whether or not it was 3 or 5 or 7, I like uneven numbers. But whether it was 3 or 5 or 7, you could dowse how many spirals if you're going to spiral wire or anything else you needed. But I wanted to see how much energy a spiral as compared to a V or as compared to a toroid, which is a donut shape, Cheerio shape. The spiral is much stronger. And then I'll show you the spiral against a quartz crystal, and you can see what's happening here. This also shoots energy off this way, and it's also darkening the photograph. But and this is just a close-up of the same thing. These slides don't show as well as the original prints, but they give you a pretty good idea of what's happening energy-wise. Okay, well, can we turn the lights on, and I'll shut that thing off. And
Were they glued together, the two?
no, just set together. But Michael, in his earlier talk, incidentally, this is Burl Payne sitting up here, and he has a new book out, and I'm going to have to ask you the title of it again, Burl.
Body magnetic.
Let me hold it up. The Body Magnetic, and Burl has been working with this type of energy for quite a while and has things that will measure it. And I haven't read his book, but I know it's good. And it would be quite interesting to read, and you may want to talk with him about his ideas on some of these things. And also Michael over here, Michael Joffrey's been working with quartz, and as I mentioned, and fiberglass, Dacron, and making biocircuits and things of that type and neutralizing harmful radiations, and he's quite well versed in it. There are probably quite a number of you in here that, in whatever you're doing, know more about it than than I do, but I know about the things I'm doing. And anyway, when I was talking about the importance of polarity when you're trying to combine things in nature, this is off an Indian piece of Indian pottery. It's also a design you see on Greek pottery. In Greek design, you also see it on Chinese things. You also, just about any culture in the world that we have records of, you'll find a design similar to this. Yes?
Wait a minute.
Shut up.
Nope.
Right.
Wait,
Be quiet.
Brett, you got it.
Okay. Let me look at my program. What time am I supposed to shut up for questions today?
Well,
What?
11:40.
How long ago? Yeah. 11:45, I'd be quiet. Okay, and it's right now 11:30. I have 15 minutes. All right, so I'm just saying that if you take a look at this, you'll notice that there is a rotation here, a spiral that goes to the left, and there's also one to the right. Now, I'm not going to tell you what those people were thinking that drew it, because I don't know. I could douse, and how could I prove? I would just say, well, you know, a scientist would say, well, that doesn't prove anything, that's just your opinion. I find my dowsing gives me lots of answers that the scientists are still fishing for or haven't even thought about. The reason that I can make some of the things I can make is because I ask and I douse the answers, and they wonder how the heck I ever found that. But the point is that this design is very, very ancient, and also we have spirals of one kind and another. But here's a piece of actual pottery with the same design. I'm married to an archaeologist, and here's a piece of Gila polychrome, which comes from pottery in our area in Arizona, and it has the same design on it. And spirals are very, very, very important. This is a spiral. This is the bottom of a light bulb. And if you hold it up to the light, I don't know if any of you can see it in here. I don't know. But if you hold this up to the light, it has cobalt. When I look out toward you, it has cobalt blue glass. I'll pass it around. But one, the screw on it is a spiral. The second thing is that they didn't use just plain glass in that. And plain glass is cheap, and cobalt glass, because I'm in ceramics, is expensive as all get out. Cobalt is a very expensive material. Now, why would somebody who's trying to make the cheapest thing in the world that'll burn out go to the trouble of using cobalt in the bottom of it, in the glass? They know something they ain't telling you. And basically, if you take cobalt blue color, which is this, some of you have been to talks in the past, are familiar with it. If you take this color or any of the dark blues, you'll find that when you put such a color over a bad energy zone in the earth, or lots of things like power pole radiation areas, you'll find that they tend to neutralize or greatly weaken that noxious radiation. And the reason they're putting the cobalt glass in the bottom of a light bulb is because they know the light bulb puts out a bad radiation and they're lessening it. Okay? If you think there's another reason, then you tell me what it is. They wouldn't spend money on something like that if they didn't have to. But spirals in nature are very important. Incidentally, here is an aluminum base on a light bulb, and it has ruby glass in it. If you look through this, it looks like a garnet or a red ruby, beautiful red ruby. I have some charts, and I'm going to pass them out to you, or let you pass them around. But what I have done was douse. You can douse your own chart, but this will give you what my opinion is. I doused the effects of different types of things in neutralizing noxious radiations, harmful radiation from things like the ground. When I say noxious, I mean the ground, and we'll say rebar, which is the reinforcing steel we were showing. Also blue color, because some people say, oh, use blue color. And ruby color, which would be the glass in the bottom of the aluminum-based light sockets, light bulb sockets. A magnet, people say use magnets. Quartz crystal, some people say, oh, quartz crystal, tie it to the cord on your microwave. A 5-leaf battery, and that's where I put leaves together and put them inside of a cardboard.
5 is that one.
Well, I just took 5. This wasn't, well, it just alternates. It could be whatever. But what I did was I have a cardboard here, and here are leaves folded up inside of it, and I marked it with a north arrow. That's so the stems would point to the north, because the stem's the smallest part of the leaf. The energy is going to flow naturally from the smallest to the largest. So, all right.
How long do they last?
How long do they last? Okay, I have a battery here. I think this was put together a year ago. And the leaves themselves, if I douse the individual leaves here, well, I'm not going to take the time to do it, but I'll tell you. If I picked these this morning. Incidentally, going out to get some leaves, I found a wonderful raspberry bush. But anyway, so I lingered a little extra there. But these are just leaves off different plants, and I doused for ones that had left rotation and ones that had right rotation, and then I alternated them. I started with a right rotation, and then I put a left rotation on top, and then a right rotation, and then a left rotation. And when I doused these, I found that I got a rating. If I asked, how much life energy do you have? I got a rating of about 20 on each leaf. And I think there's, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that, 5 there. All right, I asked, and you'd think that would total 100? Assuming you could add the energy. It'd total 100 maybe, 5 times 20. All right, when I put this together and doused it out, I got 27,000. And what I'm saying is that when you put the polarities together, it's the same as if you wanted children, you'd have a hard time if you didn't have a male and a female, and so would every other species. Life is based on combining opposing polarities. That's where it's at. And so I got 27,000 instead of 100. Then I took a quartz crystal. I got one in my pockets. Okay, I took a quartz crystal, and I could have used any gemstone or a piece of granite, any mineral, and I put the crystal on it. And when I doused it, I asked again, I aim it north, and I ask again, how much, okay, I just start asking, and I ask this question: do you have as much beneficial energy as 27,000? I'm getting yes. Do you have as much energy as 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 500,000, something like that? It just keeps going. Let's see what I ended up with. Well, at the time I first checked it, and I wasn't even with the same crystal, I got 290,000. But they tend to build a little bit, and I don't know what it would total. But what I'm saying is, you can ask, do you have as much as 10, 20, 100, 500? If you get no, back up, and you can find out what the energy of something is, and ask for a certain purpose. Now, we're asking for a numerical value for a certain purpose. In other words, suppose I want to neutralize the radiations from the fluorescent lights. Or suppose I have a computer and I want to lay this thing underneath it. You could set it on top, underneath it, whatever. And I want to neutralize that. You can ask, can I do this? Will it work? Will I be happy with the result? And then, how many leaves should I use? And are these ones that I'm picking all right? And then alternate polarities, aim the stems so that you know what direction they are, north. And then if you strap a quartz crystal to it, it will zap the energy way up, and it will completely take care of, well, you have the charts. I'm passing them around. You can see what I got as to which things work in what order. And as I say, what I douse isn't gospel. It's what my opinion is. And you can douse for yourself and see, is this guy for real or not? And that will say more than anything that I can say. But, all right, I want to talk a little about spirals in nature. I picked up some turritellos, I think they are, shells that, if I pronounced them right, and these are spiral snail shells. You see spirals everywhere in nature. Spiral energy. When we talk about chakras, we find that with a male, his crown chakra rotates to the right, his brow chakra to the left, his throat chakra to the right, his heart chakra to the left, so it's left, right, or right, left, right, left, right, left, all the way down. So you have positive up here, a right rotational, and positive down here at your base chakra. All right, with a woman, it's exactly the opposite. With a woman, you have left rotational at the top and right rotational. Just exactly the opposite on a woman. All right, probably that's why when you press against, we hug each other. There's a lot of hugging goes on around here. Well, when we step up and give each other a hug, why is it we feel so good? What's happening? Well, part of the fact is that we're putting opposing polarities together all the way up and down. Okay, you feel better. All right, so that's something that I want you to be aware of. But other than just the spirals that we see in shells, also every cell in your body has a spiral nucleus. If you talk to Dale Walker, he'll tell you, Mr. Crystal, he'll tell you that you have a spiral flow of energy up your body this way, and you have another spiral going the other way up through your body. You have a double spiral, just like a quartz crystal. People are liquid crystals. Our body is totally electric. The operation of our body is electromagnetic. When you hurt your hand, or when you pick up something, or whatever you do, an electrical response is sent to the brain. It's a very low amplitude, very small response, but it goes to the brain, and then the brain sends an electrical response back, and your body does what is necessary. It is totally electrical. That's all we are. It's totally electric, as is everything else. Energy, an arrangement of energy. All right, when we are surrounded by things like fluorescent lights, computer screens, you're sitting this close to, in front of, electronic things, everything you have, the intensity, the amount of the fields around you greatly overrides what your body is built for. This isn't anything our great-grandfathers had to deal with. They didn't even know about it. Sure, there were occasionally electrical storms and sunspots and things like that, but in general, we are just overwhelmed now in this age, and if you think it's bad now, you ain't seen nothing, because there is more and more of it happening. And so what can you do about it? What is the energy I'm talking about good for? When you build something, a life energy battery, whether you build gemstones, this is a necklace that I just bought, and I bought it on sale somewhere, and it's amethyst and quartz, rose quartz and amethyst. It is a beautiful battery. They've combined two different types of gemstones. They've also varied the shapes. The energy of that is tremendous, beneficial energy. And when you combine gemstones, you can combine them for a specific purpose. If you have some sort of an affliction and you want to deal with it, you can douse out with a pendulum asking, can I do this? Yes. I'm going to douse sideways from you. May I do this? Yes. Should I do this? Michael says just ask should I, and that'll take care of it all. But in any event, if you get yes you can, then on a scale of 1 to 10, how good would this stone be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. Write it down on a paper. Select things that run 8 or more. Then ask, can I put them together in this order? Will I be happy with the result? Will it take care of what I wanted done? And then you can put them together. Do the same thing with leaves. That type of energy will negate your normal environmental things. If they drop an H-bomb close to us somewhere, it probably won't take care of that. But then if they drop it close to you somewhere, it won't take care of it anyway. So I'd like to be far enough from one of those when they drop it that I'd say, what was that? but anyway, so how much time do I have now?
It's 47, but you can go to 12. Go ahead.
3 minutes.
Till 45.
Okay, I have a couple of minutes more.
18 minutes to 12.
But anyway, as I say, some of the things, also mentally, what can you do? Here's a glass of water. Most of you are familiar with this, but for those of you that aren't, here's a glass of water, and I poured it out of the pitcher. And I need a swallow of it. But I'm going to ask, I'm going to get back the other way so I can get farther. I want to know where the life energy in that water is. You'll find most city water is pretty awful as far as the life energy. Part of it's recycled, and they have found scientifically that water has a memory, which means if it was recycled water, it remembers where it's been, and in spite of the fact it may be chemically pure, it still has a memory of everything that it was, and that may or may not be good. But I'm going to ask, where is the beneficial energy of that water for me? All right, that's about average. It's not quite 2 feet away from it. All right, I'm going to do something here. I make things. This is a little cup that I energized. It's one I bought, and then I energized it by putting it in a ceramic kiln, firing it red hot, and then subjecting it to a very strong life energy field so the molecules align as it cools. And then the molecular structure of that glaze is totally different than when I bought it. And if I pour water or food or anything in it, then it's charged. And this won't lose its charge. This was made a couple of years ago, and it's just as strong now as it ever was. But rather than deal with that, I'd like to deal with something that you can use. We know where that was, so let me see if it'll sit on here a minute. If I can get it to sit still. Well, that'll work. Stay there. We'll charge it a minute or two, and I'm going to measure it again. But you can charge water. You can also charge it mentally, and I don't have time to charge something mentally and allow time for questions, but if you just took your food before you ate it, if you go out to a restaurant, a cafeteria, wherever you go, if you just took a moment, if you measure your food before, and you can't do that maybe in a public place without them thinking you're crazy, but you can at home. If you measure it before, you'll find the energy somewhere up here. Or if you took a pendulum and asked numerically how high it was, it'd be pretty low. All right, then if you just simply looked at it, you actually don't have to hold your hands over it or anything. But holding your hands sure helps. But if you just looked at it and visualized it being filled with God's white light, just visualize it full of energy, and you remeasure it. Instead of having a field here, it'd be clear back over there. Foods that are microwaved are just, they're dead. I mean, it may cook them, but they are dead. And simply, you know, a French cook, the last 3 stirs they give something when they're making the gravy or the food, they stir 3 times to the right. Well, you can visualize the food energizing, and you can put more energy in it than it ever had when you bought it. So it'll be way up on energy. Let's measure this again now and see what had happened, just being on a leaf battery, since that's something you could make yourself. Okay, I'm going to ask the same. I don't know what will happen. I haven't ever done this before. I like to sell things, so I don't ever use things you can make yourself. Let's see where the energy is. I want to know where the life energy of that water is now. Back here. Okay. See what's happening? It's clear back here instead of where it was. And if I had visualized, if you take a moment, so that's why you say grace. You know, if you just say, thank you God, blah, 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 blah. Let's eat. It means nothing, and nothing happens to the food. But if you say thank you, and you visualize the food being charged, visualize the food being filled with a little army of guys that go out and kill any cancer in your body, your immune system, then it makes all the difference in the world in what it will do for you. I remember I was down in Tucson in the 1950s, and I went into a supermarket, and there were 2 women by the meat counter. And one woman said to the other, "That's not a very good piece of meat, honey." And the other woman said, "It's good enough for that SOB." Now, imagine what she did to the meat. She started with bum meat to begin with. The guy probably deserved it, but she could have, you know, if she just fed him food that was charged with good energy, maybe he'd feel better. Maybe he's sleeping over noxious zone, and that's why he's crabby. More marriages split up because people are sleeping over places they oughtn't to. And if we just start being positive with things, we could make tremendous sweeping changes. That's all I'm going to say. If you'd like to ask any questions, well, I've got a minute or 2. Yes?
The woman had a blue dress like that, and when that protect her. A blue dress.
Well, blue is, if you look on the charts, did you get one?
Yeah.
Okay. If you got one of the charts I passed out, it shows you what my dowsing said blue did. And blue is effective. But 2 things. 1, blue is reasonably effective. Secondly, blue does not neutralize, it deflects. My experience with blue is if you put blue over a noxious area and then you douse around it, like if I set blue on top of my television set, And I had first doused, is there bad energy, and I'd find it, sure, out 10 or 12 feet. Then I put blue on it. Piece of bromo-seltzer bottle, a Vicks bottle, or whatever, blue glass, blue tape. Then I doused, the television is clear, but over here and over there, who else is it hitting? And also blue is not effective on everything. So I've given you a chart that shows you what my opinions are.
And what about a blue sheet on the bed?
Well, as I say, look at the chart and see what the ratings were I gave things, and then don't take my word for it, douse it out yourself and see if you feel I was accurate or not, and go by your own. But that's what I think. Blue is reasonably effective. I used to use blue, but I've come a long way since then. I think I've got things. The leaf battery under your mattress would be a lot better.
Strange town.
And the mattress is made often with coiled springs.
Oh, hey.
Yes, it is.
And they sing.
They sing.
Roughly what lifespan would you expect from the leaf battery?
The leaf batteries I've had like 2 years. I checked them, and the life energy might originally have been as high as, in some cases, 500 million, where I made some good leaf batteries. And the energy might be down to 250 million, even though the leaves were crisp and brittle. And the reason I put them between the cardboard was so when they get, and then tape it with Scotch tape, is when it gets crisp and brittle, it's still good. But it's no big deal to go out in the yard and renew your battery once a year, is it? Yes. Michael?
You want to you're talking about cellular energy and stuff like that. I want to read this book by Robert B. Stone on the secret life of your cells. This is a takeoff, completion of the story of Cleve Baxter using the GSR and talking to plants. And I've done this. And all of a sudden you realize your cell and the relationship to all the other cells around there. It becomes quite simple. It's just, I mean, there's no big mystery. All of a sudden you think differently. You just think, well, that's it. You don't try to agonize over it. We did too many agonizing things. We want this guru to answer this and that system to answer that. And we've got, like I said, God built no junk. We've got it right here. We just got to learn how to put it together.
Everything around you, yourself and everything around you, gives off energy, gives off a tone, and gives off a color. You just don't see it. If we look at the electromagnetic spectrum, the area of visible light, our eyes only perceive and register a very narrow band down in the center of that spectrum. And there's infrared, ultraviolet, and gosh knows how many other vibrations that would show up as a color if we registered them, and we don't. And everything is giving off a tone, and you're not hearing it. And when it bothers us, it's a harmful resonance to us. But you can do something about it, because here's the thing. If this room was dark, we walk in, we flip the light switch, what have we done? We've added a couple or three tones that weren't there before, and it completely changed what was dark into light, didn't it? It changed the resonance of it, or the harmonics of it, so that it changed it from what was invisible to visible. And that's what we're doing with things like the leaf batteries or the gemstones. You can douse out, you can combine things, you set up a combination of tones that can be a discord, or it can be something that's harmonic and beneficial. And all you have to do is ask the questions, and you can do it. You don't have to wait for science to discover it. Yes?
What about an imitation amethyst and a real amethyst?
I don't like imitation stones. Michael said it earlier, God don't make no junk. I'm not opposed to man-made things, but I find that imitation quartz crystals, which are synthetic, that they grow, they haven't a good memory, and they are not the equivalent of natural. And why do something cheapy when, you know, I find it, I'll get to it just an instant, I find that the gemstones, you don't have to buy an expensive gem. You don't have to go out and spend $50 or $60 or $100 on an amethyst stone. Some of the cheap ones, the least expensive that are tumbled, that stones, that are all full of flaws. If you measure them, you're going to find they have 10 times the energy of some of the perfectly clear ones.
Or the ones that are white.
But just go real.
White and purple rather than
Right.
more than a purple one.
The Jewish mama, I'm not against Jewish people. but you have to tell something ethnic somewhere so that you can make a few enemies before you quit talking. But she said, she was dying and she said, Abby, promise me something. What is it, dear? Just promise me, Abby. What is it, dear? Just promise me something. What is it, dear? Abby, just promise me. Okay, dear, what is it you want? Abby, bury me retail. And so what I'm saying is, when you do something, use the best you got. Use the best. Yes.
Okay, you mentioned when you were talking about the spiral around the tree.
French coil.
Okay, I don't know whether it's copper coil and or iron coil.
No, copper coil.
Not iron coil.
I didn't say iron wouldn't work.
It's a cat.
Copper is normally used.
Fiber optic would probably.
Get a wire that's big enough that it'll support itself. And how big is that? Well, if you had a big tree trunk, the wire is going to have to be heavier. And incidentally, it takes about 10 feet to go around a tree about that big around. Because you find by the time you've made a spiral, you know, every time it makes a circle, it's 3 times the diameter.
One of the big secrets there is finding that door and getting that relationship with things that's really happening.
I just go in
there randomly and things happen.
Okay.
But when you find the door and
the American Society of Dowsers has had a number of articles on how to make French coils. If you send me a letter with a self-addressed envelope, and you have my address there probably on that sheet or somewhere, I will Xerox them and mail them to you. And then you can go. But in the American Dowser, they've had a number of articles. One moment. Yes, sir.
Robert, I'll give you some Xerox that I have. You can have it on your table and just give it out. It's
Good.
basically the same thing.
Come by my table.
It was something I made for a group of people who know nothing about dowsers that were interested in trees, so it's a little reverse perspective. I didn't want to mention witchcraft dowsing or funny stuff.
That's great. So
And I
I'll
just
have it
know
at my
what different
table.
folks say. But now they know trees instead of dowsing.
Just one more. Yes, sir.
Well, that's interesting what you mentioned about artificial stone. So that means that even an attractive stone that's made industrial, like a zircon,
They're not real because they don't have any memory. I'll say this, that man has never, in medicines or anything else, ever synthesized a molecule that wasn't mirror image. In other words, let's say that a molecule rotated to the left, it reflected light to the left in any natural, they get quinine from the cinchona tree, all right, to treat malaria and all sorts of other things, colds, all right, it would reflect light in a certain manner. When? Because of the rotation in the molecules, all right. When man synthesizes it, it rotates the opposite direction. And everything that man has ever made is mirror image. And that's why when you have drugs, you have a list. If I go to the doctor and he gives me a prescription for my blood pressure or something, I don't take anything now, but if I did, he'd give me a sheet this long. Oh, incidentally, here's the free pills you can try, and this you should know. And you read it down, and it says, excruciating back pains, you will grow breasts. One leg will grow shorter than the other. Your testicles will atrophy, and so forth. And so that's why. It's because we have not yet learned. We probably will.
Just look what you and I were playing around with this, Jimmy, what that happened. Look what happened to the Bell Labs when that happened.
Let me tell you, yeah.
They were playing with fiber optics, and they were lucky to make it 44 inches.
When
they applied a little germanium to it, they went 141.6 miles.
That's right.
And now he's trying to go 100.
No. Yeah, while I was here, every year I come here, I come to recharge my battery too. And I pick up a lot. And if it weren't for Michael and it weren't for a number of other people here, I wouldn't be anywhere nearly as far along as I am in what I'm doing. But people ask questions. Sometimes they don't know. They ask the question, and that causes me to think about something I never thought about before. Like Michael saying, this rotates this way and that way, huh? And I say, huh? And I go home and I sit down and start fooling with it, and I start putting things together and I remeasure them, and I find, wow. And so.
Speaking of rotation, now this just happened, a couple of weeks ago. I was laying on a drain board there, and I was reaching over here for something. And, I got hit in the back. I mean, that was pain. Yes. And I backed off, and the pain went. I reached, I got jerked again. I said, what the hell goes on here? So I reached all over the kitchen, both hands, nothing. Then I looked down, and here's a Clorox bottle, conical top, right? Projecting, left-hand energy, Clorox. Guys in the farm and home office down there, they got all of this here, spray and all this stuff in conical top bottles. They say they come in Monday morning. You can't live in that damn place. Well, we're going to see about getting a sheet of fiberglass and put it over there and break that sucker down so they can come back in there and live. But you go over the sink, don't like to do dishes. I don't mind doing dishes. But all of a sudden I lean over that thing and lower back problem. All these stinking little bottles of chemistry in there going their thing. Take them out of there. Hell, we wash it.
Well, they're all putting off,
Right,
they all
right.
put off a resonance and a
Right.
vibration, and you may not think you feel it, but you do feel it.
Oh, boy.
And some people are much more sensitive than others. Anytime that you make something, like when I say a Breathe Easy pendant or something that we make, all right, when I make it, just because it's good for me does not mean it's good for everybody else. And I have a friend that's gone now, but he was deathly allergic, fatally allergic to aspirin. And you know, if you had pneumonia, they give you penicillin. They check you first to see if you can handle it. But if you can handle it all right, then it would cure you of pneumonia and a lot of other things. It's a miracle drug. But there are people who are fatally allergic to it and throw you into anaphylactic shock. And so people are quite different. At any time that you find something that works for you, if you're applying it to anyone else, you have to ask, can I, may I, should I, will it work, will they be happy with it? You know, hit the whole gamut of questions.